You're listening to the Vampire Princess podcast. I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Seth.
And go ahead and subscribe and click that bell to become a VPP. And we'll get into that later. But today's episode is going to be called How Can Saying No Actually Lead to Saying Oh Yes? And to get into it, we're going to go over our attachment styles because our attachment styles might be influencing the way you set or don't set boundaries. So, to dive deeper into that, we're going to talk about what boundaries are, and then we're going to go over the different type of attachment styles. Um, Seth, do you want to kind of describe in your own words like what you think boundaries are?
Yeah. So boundaries, for me, are basically hard limits as to um, how an interaction should be able to go with you. So, and that doesn't necessarily include, sorry, it doesn't necessarily be limited to um, when people just say no and somebody does something anyway, as a break of that. It's a general sort of limit that can be applied to a lot of aspects of behavior, whether you've verbally established them or not. So a lot of people, for example, tend to have, boundaries that are almost unspoken, where you would, and a lot of it's to do with societal expectations as well. So not just um, to do with like personal romance and intimacy. There's a lot of aspects to society where you have boundaries. So for me, it's basically any border between the acceptable and unacceptable. Um, and sometimes it can be a hard border. Sometimes there's grey areas in the middle, and you kind of need to play it by ear really to establish what those are.
That's what I was going to mention too. Like, it can be a hard limit, but where the lines get blurred is like if it's a boundary that could like potentially be like a little flexible, but that's not like ideal. Like you're possibly willing to do it, but it's not your favorite thing. And I'll just say like as you were saying, like as a societal example, like for example, if you tell your boss, like I don't want to work the weekends. I want to be at home with my family or just whatever. And your boss gives you most weekends off, but asks you to work like one weekend a month or something. And so they are crossing that boundary of you saying, I don't want to work weekends, but like it's potentially something that you would be willing to do. Like, oh, I could use a little extra money, or it's not a big deal if, I work one weekend a month. But I think the best way to like know like those hard boundaries is to think about yourself in the position like before you get into the thick of it. So before you get the job, before you start a relationship, before you've got your new best friend. Like let's say that for example, like you would think to yourself, these are my hard boundaries that I have in terms of friendship. Like that way before the person is asking for something that could potentially break the boundary, like you can think back to no, I've already established that I don't want to do this. So I'm not going to let this person kind of more or less talk me into it, even if they are my best friend, even if their intentions are completely innocent. Like, I'm not going to put myself in that position because going into this, like, I know what I want. If you're like, no, 100%, I'm not working any weekends, like, I want that time off. I need that time off for XYZ. And then your boss asks you to work that one weekend a month and you know it's your hard boundary, then you're going to have to say no. Like, with all respect, like I made you aware of this in the beginning. This is the boundary I have set to maintain like my work life balance, like whatever. you have to have like almost like that courage to say no. And I think that can be hard for people like me who are people pleasers, because you think to yourself, hey, it would be easier if I just worked that one weekend. My boss likes me more. I make a little extra money. Like, you start telling yourself it wouldn't be so bad. But you have to think back to, like, no, I deserve this. I told myself, like, this is what I deserve before I got into this situation, before I even knew who my boss was. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of companies will also try and push those boundaries.
Yes.
I've seen, like, people who have mentioned on social media about how, on one occasion that really springs to mind, an employee created a fictional scenario in which they were a parent because it was like a family business, and basically it was almost the only way for this person to say no, I'm not going to work weekends, was for them to say, well, I've got a family and the weekend is time that I need to spend with my child. They didn't have a family, but they knew that the business was going to try and push stuff on them,
Yes.
so they kind of had to basically lie about being a parent so that those boundaries would stop getting pushed.
No,
Um,
I've seen that even at places where I've worked. It's been like, if we needed X amount of people to stay late to get the project done on time, then however many people are going to stay late. And then they start dividing it out by, okay, well, these people have kids, so these people get to go home. And these people without kids, you have to stay and work overtime. And obviously, I don't have kids, so it rubs me the wrong way. I do get it to an extent, like for parents out there. Like, obviously, you have to pick your kid up from school. I mean, the school's gonna like call the police if you don't show up to get your kid. You can't just not show up to get your kid. But yes, I can totally see why someone would lie, because it's like, just because we're not a parent doesn't mean we don't have other commitments.
Absolutely. And in a similar situation when it comes to people who want to take like uh, like holiday time, annual leave, eh, especially over Christmas. A lot of businesses will prioritize the people with families, and it's like that can be good, that can be not so good. Um, I think overall an understanding needs to be done. But seriously, some people have been in the situation where they've worked every single Christmas day because the people getting priority, the people with families. I kind of get it, but at the same time, I don't see how my decision not to have them should mean that I have to pick up the slack for people that have chosen to have them.
And I think like stuff like that should be completely optional, because there are some people that are like, I have nothing to do on Christmas. It's just another day to me. I don't even celebrate the holiday. Like, please pay me double, triple, and
Mhm.
I'll definitely come into work. But it's just like, if the people want to have off and your business is not going to, you know, crash and burn in the next 24 hours during Christmas Day, then, let those people have off. But yeah, I think it's important, like, just before you put yourself in a situation like that new job, like, you write down, like, even if it's just a list to yourself, like, these are my workplace boundaries. That I have Christmas Day off. That whatever that you need in the workplace, like, that I get a lunch break every single day, like, no matter what, like, you set those things up for yourself. And so before you're in it, like, it will make it easier for you to say no if you can go back and look, like, this is what I knew that I deserved. So if you take that same line of thinking, like, even if you're single, even if you're not looking to be with anyone, like, write yourself, if you're a list person like me, I'm a list person, obviously, but even just to think of it in your mind, these are some hard boundaries in a relationship. That is just a line that I absolutely will not cross no matter what. And these are, some soft boundaries, some things that I would like. It's not, a relationship like deal breaker, but I'd like to talk to my partner and see how they feel about these things, if we could get on the same page about them, and just like that way when you're in the relationship, because you're going to be adding on the layers of how much you like this person, how much you want to appease this person. You don't want to, if this is the person that you love or whatever, you don't want to just start a fight with them. You want them to like you as well. So just having that knowing, like, before you get yourself in, you can look back at that list and think, like, I knew what I deserved back then. Like, now I'm in the situation and I need to speak up for, what I deserve in a relationship, even if that is going to upset the other person.
Yeah. I mean, the person that cares for you enough will listen to that, and you can come up with, a way in which that can happen. If you need to bring in boundaries that you hadn't told them were there before, or if things have kind of crossed the line unknowingly, almost, because sometimes you kind of just organically move into a
Mhm.
situation where, oh, I've just realized this has crossed that boundary. Could we just step back from that a bit, please? And, a lot of people, if they've got good communication, and good understanding, and that sort of, ability to kind of connect with the other person on the right level, that should be fine. That shouldn't be an issue. Um, and, because the right person will be incredibly respectful of those boundaries. And I think that's always a good thing. And it's a good test almost for whether it's the wrong person, because the wrong person might kick off about that and be like, well, hang on, no, 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 we've got here, this wasn't a problem before. Why are you making problems now? And it's like, well, I'm not making problems. It's just that we seem to have found ourselves on the wrong side of what I want and what I don't want. And so, there's the whole big difference between the two aspects in a relationship. Even if you weren't aware when a boundary had been crossed, and then looking back and reflecting on it, you've realised, oh, right, my boundary about this particular thing has been crossed. We weren't aware of it, but now I'm aware of it. And it is actually causing me a bit of difficulty because I'm having to change something that I don't like. And so, yeah, it's a whole thing about that is just with the right person, the right amount of respect, you'll be able to walk things back to where it's a little more comfortable.
And if you've ever like found yourself, having trouble speaking up or establishing boundaries, you're definitely not alone, and it could be leading back to your attachment style. And so, talking about attachment style, that comes from a thing called attachment theory that was founded by two different psychologists, John Bowley and Mary Ainsworth. And so, basically, in their study of what they were, researching, they actually tested this with infants, with babies. And so it would be like, for example, if the mother or father puts the child down and walks out of the room, like they were studying it based on how does that, child react? Are they screaming? Are they crying? Are they chill? And so that was giving them insights to their attachment, to their loved ones. Um, but an important thing to note, like before we dive into it, there's four different types of attachment styles. Is that attachment styles are not like a stagnant thing. They can change over time. You could literally experience like all four different types of attachment styles in like four different relationships that you've been in. So, if you feel like, as we talk about one, that you relate to it and that's you, it's important, A, to acknowledge that it's you, but B, to know that it is a changeable thing. Like, if you put in the work, like, you could change your attachment style. It's not like your astrological sign. Like, if you're a Gemini, you're just a Gemini. And like, this is something where you might find yourself being one thing, or you might have a look back and be like, oh, I was that. in that relationship with that person, but it can change over time. And while we get into the 4 attachment styles, let's just start with the first one. So the first one we're going to talk about today is anxious preoccupied. And these people, they really want like that sense of closeness to their partner. And so because they want to be so close like all the time, like latched on, that they have a strong fear of abandonment. And as I'm saying this, you can probably think back to, that infant in the crib. They don't want to be abandoned. They don't want to be put down. They want to be just constantly held. And that can lead to having weak boundaries. And by that, I mean if you find yourself overcommitted to a relationship, committed way more than the other person, or just committing very early on, you've struggled to say no. Like you haven't really wanted to do it, but they really wanted to do it, and so you just went along with it. And somewhere along the way, like your boundaries in the relationship got blurred. Have you ever been with a person like this, or have you ever felt like this?
Both. I've definitely had that in a lot of relationships. To be honest, when I was a less confident person, it was stronger. Um, and certainly, I think my most recent relationship, I had a definite sense of this. Um, I was not. I was not sort of, it wasn't tremendously strong. It was just one of those things that I was constantly sort of worrying, am I the only person here that's really giving it my all? This doesn't feel like it's a two-way street here. And so my boundaries dropped, and the amount of stuff that I realized that I was compromising on for the lifestyle that I wanted, and how many boundaries I was breaking through, just because, like, I for example, I've been determined that, for the longest time, the nuclear family is not a thing for me. I don't really want children, but I was like sort of willing to sort of compromise on that, and I was like, whoa, that's a big boundary for me to be um, you know, compromising on. I feel that that's way too much. So yeah, I was struggling to say no. It was all becoming, something that I, I feel like my character sort of almost weakened as a result of it. I was not anywhere near as confident in myself as I could have been as a result of it.
I mean, internally, like, did you just kind of shoot yourself down, like, about being like, "Oh, I could compromise on this?" Like, did you start backtracking, or was it a thing of like, "This person is really happy, and I don't wanna upset them," or, like, what was it in your case?
It was. I think it was more a case of I really absolutely felt the connection so strongly I couldn't do a great deal about it. She was not, I think, as forthcoming with those feelings and connections, and was a lot less willing to compromise on anything. So, because we were in slightly different places, it was me that ended up compromising. And so I wound up with a lot of compromises that I really would not have done for anybody else, because I've never felt as strongly as that before.
Yeah, so it just all came back to that sense of doing, like, basically what you could to try to keep them because you don't wanna lose that person. That sense of
Yes.
closeness, that sense of kind of more or less, like, latching on to them.
Yes, absolutely, which really wasn't healthy.
And I know a lot of my friends have been in this same sort of attachment style. I don't think I've ever felt it or been with someone like this, so it is a little bit more. I wouldn't say it's difficult for me to understand, but I haven't been through it, so I don't have that sort of like relation to it, but I can definitely see how it happens. And I think, like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it comes from like that feeling of like sometimes the relationship is like your world becomes centered around that like relationship. Like if you lose that person, it would just feel like your world would absolutely crumble like without them.
Yeah,
And I just think that is obviously not a healthy place and a place where I would want anyone to be, like any of my friends. Like I would want them to know like you are still you. You are a whole, person without them.
yeah.
You were fine before you ever met them and you're going to be fine after. But I know obviously I've been through breakups and stuff, so I know it's a lot easier said than done.
Absolutely. It was an incredibly difficult thing to replace that within my life. I don't know quite why I got to that level. I guess I just hadn't felt anything as strong before. Like I said, I think I've mentioned this before in previous podcasts. I've been in love exactly 2 times, and that was one of those times. Um, that was the second time, and it was an absolute overshadowing of the first, and partially because this person had been a friend for so many years before well, before we fell for each other.
Right. And so, well, let's talk about our second of the four attachment theory. So the next one we're going to talk about is dismissive avoidant. And this is the kind of person that, you know, against their own thinking or against their own good, has the tendency to push away. And they want to create distance to protect themselves. They have very rigid boundaries. That's what they're going to bring to the relationship. I know I've dealt with my fair share of people that have definitely had this attachment style. What about you? Have you ever had it? Have you ever met anyone that had it? I've experienced it not only in relationships, but a lot of the time with family members. Like the family members that are just so rigid and so emotionally distant that you think to yourself, like, I'm not even sure how you're not even processing emotions. Like, I don't see you feel emotional like about anything.
Yeah, I've had maybe a couple of relationships that have been like that, and they were short lived. Because of the avoidant nature and the fact that whilst yes, I understand the boundaries, I understand why, but I'm not getting the feelings that I think really are so vital in this, that are so important. So yeah, it's a very different sort of thing. Like it didn't feel like there was a connection that was a two-way street in that respect either, because it almost feels like one person's always going to wind up doing the most work, and it is not the person who is dismissive avoidant.
I've have people like this in my family. Like I said, it's been like you are going through something so emotional, or you're talking about something so emotional, and they've been through, the exact same thing, and just talking about it, like, visibly upsets you, can bring you to the point of tears, like, and they're talking about it, and it's so blank and it's so dry, and I've literally thought, how are you not crying? Like right now, like I feel like I'm about to cry. Like, how are you not crying? And like, funny enough, like this has been with a lot of the women in my family. Like, I know that a lot of people could think that's like a man, or like a man doesn't want to cry. He'll bottle those feelings up, push them aside, like whatever. But I have this experience with a lot of the women in my family, and I think that adds like a layer of double hurt. But yeah, a lot of the women in my family are not big crying. I've seen the men in my family cry far more often than pretty much any of the women.
Well, that's quite, quite a thing, and it feels to me almost like that's a healthy thing for the men to be able to cry in a society which tends to frown upon that sort of thing. I think that's a good amount of strength for them to have.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's quite an interesting dynamic. That sure.
It just puts so many negative emotions back onto the person trying to have, some sort of, relationship, whether it's romantic, like familial, whatever, because it makes them think like, am I too emotional? Like if we've gone through the same things and this person isn't crying about it, like, it puts it all inwards, like towards that person, and makes them think that they're the one being odd, or they're the one being overly emotional, overly reactive, like what have you. So it's I think it is one of the more difficult attachment styles, like for a person to have, like to just be around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the third one is going to be fearful avoidant. So avoidant is in there as well. This is going to be like kind of a mixture of the previous two we've talked about, where it's going to give that sense of close and then away, and then close and then away. And so that leads to a fear of abandonment as well, because when they pull away, it makes you want to try to pull them back into the relationship. A fear of intimacy that person has. Um, Inconsistent boundaries. So, because we're going with the close and away, it might be like, oh, yeah, like I don't have a boundary, like do this, do that, and then away, like, no, like don't cross my boundary, like that sort of situation. Have you been with someone like this or met someone like this?
Yeah, my most recent relationship was with somebody that was like this, and that was part of it because where I was having those difficulties were usually when I was being pushed away. But the boundaries are so inconsistent. I had no idea what I was doing half the time. I was like, I feel like I'm, and the moment that I kind of almost got myself to the point where I'd given up trying to chase, suddenly it was close again. And I was like, oh, excellent. I can be
Mhm.
myself and everything's balanced. And then suddenly it wasn't again. And it was very difficult. It was that inconsistency was terrifying in many ways. It was very difficult to know how much I could attach and how much I wouldn't. It made it almost impossible to plan for any kind of future, which was
Yes.
the security that I needed.
And I've been with someone who was this in the beginning. But, as time went on and, we work on things, this person changed their attachment style. But when I met them, this was their attachment style. And it is being with a person with this attachment style, it is literally feeling like a TV show. It's feeling like a movie. It's feeling like, because things are changing so rapidly, and like you don't know where you stand. It's like you're floating through space almost, but you're trying, and then you feel like the other person's not trying. So, like you said, you get to the point where you want to give up, and then suddenly that person wants to try again. So, it's just like it beats you down kind of slowly over time, I think is a good way to put it. But on their end, it's they're they see themselves, getting very close to someone. They see themselves falling in love. They're on the same page as we are. Like they see the future with us. And that just scares like the hell out of them. Like they start thinking like, "Whoa, like I'm scared of this type of intimacy because of whatever reason, like they've been hurt in the past, they've been cheated on in the past, they've had a divorce in the past, whatever. Something is holding them back from just completely letting the walls down. So once they realize, oh no, like my walls are almost down and then I'm not going to be able to protect myself when things go haywire because, history has proven to me that things are going to go haywire. Every relationship I've had is going to get messed up or whatever. So they immediately just build those walls right back up. And I think that's the person that like is being like is honestly like genuinely a good person. They're just stuck in this attachment style. But I'm going to say on the flip side of that coin, there's people that are in this attachment style and they know what they're doing. It's calculated, it's manipulative. They know that if they keep breaking you down, like they can do whatever to you, and then they're going to give you a slightest little bit of hope and you're going to come crawling back. So I think this is a very like dangerous one because when you're the other person in the relationship, I mean, I wouldn't say it's like flipping the coin, but which one are you going to get, heads or tails? Is this genuinely a person that is scared? Or is this a person that, is hurting you on purpose?
It's very difficult to tell because there's no real way until you're there, and you obviously you want to think the best of people. You don't want to think, oh, this person's manipulating me. You want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and so it can be very difficult to work out what somebody is, what they're doing. Is this fear and lack of control, or is this you know an incredibly manipulative and controlling personality type? Is this person a horrible person and they've just kept it a secret?
I,
It can be so difficult.
yeah, and I think that's where the trouble lies, trying to figure out which one is it. Like is this person, like just say for example, are they genuinely scared to get engaged to you because their last engagement blew up? They got cheated on, like it was announced for their whole family, like maybe they had a really traumatic, horrible thing happen to them, and so they're just, I think, rightfully scared going into the next relationship. I wouldn't say rightfully, but what I'm saying is I can see how, there's going to be some hesitancy in going into the next relationship because they don't want to repeat, what just happened. But
Yeah.
on that other hand, it's like, you know, do they not want to get engaged to you purposely because they're leading you on, because they're dragging this on? And it can be hard to tell because that's the thing about these people is, when you look back at the one we talked about before, dismissive avoidant, when that person's just giving you away, it's easy to feel like, okay, like I'll go away. But when you have someone more in the fearful avoidant, when you're close, they're having that closeness. I mean, it's spectacular. It's amazing. Like both of you are thinking like maybe that this is the best thing you've ever felt until it isn't.
That's it. It's that this is great until it isn't. It's the And then you got that sort of fear of, okay, hope this lasts, but how long is it going to last? If it happens too many times, that close and away, you're almost just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And
Right. And I think that's another reason that this is a dangerous one, like to be in a relationship with, because we haven't got to it yet. But, obviously the fourth attachment style is secure. So if a secure person gets into a relationship with a fearful avoidant, over time, that secure can regress back into that anxious, preoccupied, that first one we talked about, because when the other person's pulling away, like they're kind of grasping at straws. They're like, whoa, 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 like, we had something so good. Like, why are you kind of fading away? Like, I want to be close to you. So you can revert someone who's already secure back into like a bad attachment style just because that relationship with the fearful avoidant is such a roller coaster, emotional roller coaster of up and downs, and it makes you think like, "Hey, I thought we were in this. Why aren't we in this? Is it me? Is it something I did?" Like, you end up kind of wanting to fix it, but it makes you more anxious that they're gonna leave you.
Definitely. I mean, and as I mentioned, this was the style before. I was in that anxious situation where it was like, oh, right, she's pulling away again. I don't know quite what's going on. Um, and I think ultimately, things just haven't worked out. And that's the other thing is, interestingly enough, I felt myself getting attached again, and it was like I ended up almost being in that sort of situation where I kind of held back a little because I was like, I don't want to get attached. I cannot get attached. If this happens again, it's just going to hurt again. She's not going to go for it. And she later told me, actually, I wanted to see how things went. Of course, if she had told me that at the time, the whole situation would have been different. But she didn't, and I ended up basically having a bit of a mental breakdown, and
Right.
ended up with one of the most extreme mental health episodes I've had in years as a result of it. Whereas just one sentence from her could have avoided that entirely. And it's obviously not my place to tell her that because I don't want to put any guilt on anyone. It's not, it's just one of those things is like I was torturing myself because I didn't want to push boundaries, push her boundaries. But if she'd have said something, I don't know, and that boundary wasn't there, and that self torture would have been completely unnecessary. So it's not her fault or responsibility, but I really wish the communication had been better because I I took something upon myself that wasn't necessary in the end.
I mean, I respect what you're saying, but we might have to agree to disagree a little bit there. And obviously, you're my friend, you're someone that I care about, and I do get what you're saying, but ultimately, I feel like it kind of is their responsibility to have communication with you. Like, I get what you're saying, like, it's not their fault, but that's why I think boundaries are important. Communication is important because, like you said, if you would have known things up front, things could have gone a completely different way, and you wouldn't have been as hurt. You would still be hurt regardless because the relationship, ended, and that's understandable, but it wouldn't have pushed you, into oblivion. So I do think she does kind of share a responsibility to communicate that because sometimes you have to think like if the roles were reversed, and there was a woman in the relationship with a man that just didn't communicate anything into her, everyone would be like, "Oh my god, like that was like a horrible thing to do to her. Like she's in a world of hurt, and like it's because of you." But it's crazy how when the gender roles, kind of are flipped, that I think you just might not feel like she's entitled to be like responsible for her behalf, and I think she totally is. That's why I said we can agree to disagree on that, but that's just my opinion, like from someone that cares about you.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you for saying. Yeah, I feel like she shouldn't have to do certain things just to keep me happy if it's not what she ultimately
Oh
wants.
yeah, for sure.
Uh,
I do agree. I do agree with that point. With anyone, I mean, anyone shouldn't. No person should have to do something they don't want to do. Like that's just a general blanket statement that I believe in. And actually, when I was in middle school and my childhood best friend, we spent a lot of time together, and my mom was like her second mom. Her mom's like my second mom, like even still like to this day. And I just remember we were on the way to school one day. This is about the time where, we're starting to get boyfriends, especially me and my friend. We kind of we had a habit of I mean, back then, like, really what was a boyfriend? It was just someone you saw at school, maybe at the mall, the movies. Like, it wasn't like, an adult relationship. Like, maybe you kissed, maybe you held hands, but me and My friend definitely were at a time where we were having a lot of boyfriends in middle school. But I just remember, her mom, we were in the car on the way to school, and she told us, like, she was kind of aware of, we were starting to date and things like that, and she told us, "I want you to understand, like, that you never have to do anything you don't wanna do." And my friend was like, "What?" Like, even in school, even our teachers, and she's like, "No, I want you to, like, listen to what I'm saying. You never have to do anything you don't wanna do." And I that was just something, like, I really needed to hear, like, in that point of my life because I hadn't, had real relationships yet, but then once I got to high school, that was always in the back of my mind, like, "Hey, I don't have to kiss this boy just because he's my boyfriend if I don't want to." And like you see the line of thinking there, like, I don't have to do something with this boy if I don't want to, even if he is my boyfriend. And I don't have to make an excuse for it. Like, even if he is my boyfriend and he wants to, like, I just don't want to. Like, there is no further explanation needed. Like, I don't want to. I don't have to give you some excuse. Like, I don't have to lie to you about why not. It's just that's why. I don't want to.
Mm.
But I
There's
think it did help me a lot growing up.
one of the greatest things I think I'd ever read on online was the words "No" is a complete sentence.
Exactly. And it's like when you're at that time of your life where you're either, you know, 18, 19 years old, like now you're in college and it's just like some guys expect a certain thing out of you. It's just like you don't have to. And here's the thing about that. Even as you get older, even as you get married, you still don't have to. Like, just because you marry someone doesn't mean you have to do anything you don't want to do. Like, you never have to do anything you don't want to do. And if you feel inside like you don't want to, like, then trust me, just don't do it. Because you're going to end up, like, doing something that you regret, or I mean, basically, if you're telling yourself, like, you're saying, "I don't wanna do this," like, that's your basic consent right there, that you don't want to, so don't force yourself or feel like you have to.
Absolutely.
Like, unfortunately, even if it's just be in the relationship at all, like, you've been together a long time and then, like, it is gonna hurt that person. Like, that's a given, any relationship that ends, people are gonna be hurt, but if you just feel you don't wanna do it anymore, you don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You can choose just to not do anything in the relationship, including being in the relationship anymore. That is just, it requires two people's constant, consistent consent in order to maintain a relationship. And for the dynamic of a relationship to be how it is as well requires constant, consistent consent. It's like there's people that sort of open up their relationships expecting something to happen and it doesn't. Both people have to consent continuously to maintain the relationship being open. And as soon as one of them stops it, that's it. Anything that if one person's acting like the relationship's open and the other one isn't, then it's cheating.
Right. And once you really, like, you take some words of advice like that, you don't have to do anything you don't wanna do. I think it led me into, like, my early adulthood being into that 4th, attachment style, which is secure. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but this is what everyone should aim to be at, right? Like, if you've heard us talk about the last 3 and you've thought, like, "Yes, that's definitely me," like I said in the beginning, you don't have to stay there. Like, you can work and get yourself into secure. So when you're have a secure attachment, it means you're comfortable with yourself, you're comfortable with intimacy, And what I mean by that is not always saying yes, but also saying no. You will feel completely comfortable to say no, I don't want to do it. You can communicate your needs directly to that person. So, whether it is your partner, whether it is your boss, your parents, whatever. And when I say like communicate your needs, I do want to also say like the key there is being respectful and kind when you communicate your needs. I don't mean that you can say, "Oh, I'm secure now. I'm going to give blanket statements. I'm going to give ultimatums because this is what I want," like blah blah blah. Like no, you still have to be a kind human being like at the end of the day. But another way you'll know that you are secure is that you can respect your partner's boundaries like easily. So, even if it's something you don't want, even if your partner, you know, says, "No, I don't want to do this anymore," or, whatever, this is my boundary. Let's say, for example, you've been cheated on in the past and you like to be able to look into your partner's phone. But then your partner says, Entering this relationship, I want you to know my like hard boundary is my phone and my computer, whatever, is like my private items. Like you're not allowed to look through it. Is that if you have a secure attachment and you have the basis, foundations of a relationship, which is like trust and respect, is that you're not going to flip out when a partner communicates their boundary to you. Like you're going to have respect for that. You're going to see, okay, like you've communicated a boundary. I've heard you. Like we're on the same page. Even if it's something that like might not make you happy, it's just that you can still give them like the basic respect. If you find yourself flipping out when your partner communicates boundaries, it is a good chance that maybe you're not quite too secure.
Hmm. A good, a good secure person would respect the boundary that somebody doesn't want their phone going through. A secure person wouldn't ask to go through the phone.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, whether or not there's if you're secure, then you'd be happy to provide that boundary as a thing that you don't want to happen. Um, why? I mean, I don't know why that would be an issue if you were secure. Apart from unless there's like classified stuff on there, or there are sort of limits as to how much. It feels like that trust being an equal two-way street is a case of you know one person wouldn't want you to do this, the other person wouldn't require you to do this. So it's everybody's happy because nobody goes through anybody else's stuff that isn't necessary because it doesn't bring anything to relationship to do that anyway. So your phone's your business, my phone's my business. We don't need to see each other's business. But then one day it might be, oh, could you check this for me? The password such and such. Yeah, okay, I'll need to find it on your phone. Fair enough. That's a situation which you're specifically expressing that you would wish for the person to go through your phone to gather some information for you because they might not be able to or don't want to. It falls almost in line with the same principle of like somebody might have a fear of like being intimate with a partner, but if they're injured, they might want their partner to wash them. And so it's about there is a time when that might be a thing that's necessary, and secure people will be okay with that and comfortable with that. Um, it's I'm still a work in progress on getting to the secure bit. It is an objective of mine, and I think I can get there. But for now, it's still a work in progress, I think.
And when you mentioned it earlier, like it really did make me see how like, you know, how you said you were in that relationship, the other person was maybe a fearful avoidant, the close and away. And you might have been secure, but it led you back to a place of feeling back to anxious, preoccupied, of, trying to be close, trying to overcompensate, overcommit to that person. Like then that relationship ends. You realize, like, I wasn't in a good place. I wasn't, where I want to be. So I'm going to, like, try. But that person, I'm not saying you specifically, but could try and go to that place of fearful avoidant where they're like, okay, I'm going to try being close. And then all of a sudden they remember, like, that hurt from before when that previous relationship ended. And that can lead them to want to push away. And so I can see the cycle of good people being it, having a fearful avoidant attachment style. It's just deciphering, like, is this in a good person in an emotionally vulnerable or bad place than what they would normally be because of past hurt? Or is this someone that is, purposely, breadcrumbing me, basically, giving me little hopes just so I'll stick around. And then right when I realize that it's time for me to go, they do a 180 and they're back. Love bombing tactics, things of that nature. So it's a
Mm.
little hard to decipher there. But on a different note, I've said on the internet before that, yeah, I'm not, boundary for me is not going through each other's phones and stuff like that, just because, well, I don't really need to give a reason, but I will. It's like you said, it's just a private thing, and also I just don't care. What's I don't care enough to look through someone else's phone. Like, I know a lot of my friends, um, and you know what? Ultimately, rightfully so, ended up going through their partner's phone. And the reason that they wanted to look is, there were issues of trust. I mean, that's what it all boils down to. If you have the desire, I think, to look through their phone with the intent to see, like, if they're cheating, like, there might be a good chance that's what's happening because the relationship is at that place. But, like, one of my friends, for example, she was having intimacy issues with her man. Like, he did not want to be intimate with her. Like, he was, and then it all just stopped. And, like, that's normal. Couples go through dry spells, like, whatever. But, like, it stopped for, like, a really long time. Like, a really long time. And to the point where they were basically essentially just roommates. Like, when I say that, the intimacy levels went way, way down, just in all regards. Okay, not just that. But anyway, her best friend was going through a divorce at the time, and so she just needed to get out of the house that she was in. The guy had took all the furniture from her house. It was just a crazy situation. So she was like, "Just come stay with me, and my man or whatever." And she'd been telling her friend, like, all this stuff that was happening, and so they were all in the living room hanging out. And the guy was like, "I'm gonna go take a shower," and he left his phone on the couch. And her friend was like, "Do you know his passcode?" And she was like, "What?" And she was like, "Seriously, do you know his passcode?" And she was like, "Yeah, but we don't, look through each other's phones." And she was like, "Girl, put in his passcode right now. I'm telling you, something is up." And I think, honestly, like, that was just her, like, gut feeling, her intuition, like, of her best friend, like, she knew something was wrong. And it might be easier to see it when you're not in the relationship. That's why I don't always recommend spilling all your relationship details to a friend, but I also do because sometimes it's good to just get, like, a second opinion. And it's good to get a second opinion of someone that's, like, your friend but still objective. Like, the person's not trying to get with you. It's just like a platonic relationship. But anyway, they go onto his phone and see that, basically he's in a relationship with another man. And whenever he's been telling her that he was going, to a different state to visit his family, it wasn't his family. It was his, secret lover the whole time. And so I just wish I could have seen, like, how they were trying to act when he came out of the shower, because they were trying to act like they hadn't just looked on his phone and revealed, like, his whole, like, secret identity. Um because that was they didn't want to have that conversation with someone else present. Obviously, that would just lead to like a toxic sort of argument. Like no one wants to be called out in front of someone else, so they had a conversation about it privately at a later date. But yeah, I mean, the feeling was there to check his phone, and ultimately there was something on his phone. I think sometimes women do have that intuition that something is awry, they just don't know what. And it's easy for your mind to go of a place of cheating, but yeah, I'm someone that's just my boundary. It's communicated like right in the beginning. I don't like to go through each other's stuff. And I have no problem giving my passcode because like my mind goes to the place of like what like if I'm in the hospital, like can you like let my family know or something? Like I'm not against them knowing the passcode or having the ability to go into it, but yeah, if I found out they were checking it behind my back, I would obviously be pretty upset. But in the case of my friend and her boyfriend at the time, that just because you're upset someone looked through your phone doesn't negate that you were cheating and pushing other boundaries in the relationship. I mean, that's kind of the same thing there.
Yeah, there's a bit of a kind of like a different thing as to what you're expecting, really, isn't it? Like I certainly didn't expect it to quite go that way. With those two, like, especially when obviously she clearly knew that there was something going on, but I imagine it's going to be slightly difficult. Obviously, with the fact that well, so there's nothing wrong with it being another man. It's just the fact that I suppose for her, it's going to slightly change. Well, hang on, is that why you're not really interested in me because I'm not your actual type? Um, I mean, it kind of for obviously for them, it's not very nice being cheated on. But yeah, there's something sort of what I would call background amusing about the subversion of expectations there.
I mean, whatever it was, I could only imagine how awkward it was. Like once he got out of the shower, back and sat back down into the living room with all three of them, and they're trying to pretend like they don't know. Like,
Absolutely. I mean, you wouldn't even know where to look.
but yeah, so we can break down a couple of things of if you do find yourself in one of those first three attachment styles that we talked about, a couple of ways to help you break the cycle, just to develop healthy boundaries. And the first step is going to be like some honest, like self reflection of which one am I. Because some people are like, oh no, I'm good. Like I'm definitely secure. Like I don't even have to think about it. But really think about it and like I was talking about in the beginning, kind of make that whether it's a physical or mental list in your mind of your boundaries. Like, did you find yourself in your last relationship communicating them? Did you find yourself speaking up like before it ever got to be a problem? So yeah, just think, which one genuinely am I? And then two, your communication skills. Figure out a healthy way that you can express yourself to your partner, but kindly. Whether that's being like, I'm reactionary when I hear something I don't want to hear, whatever it is. Maybe it's I don't speak up because I'm a people pleaser, and it's easier for me to just go along with things than it is to, potentially start an argument. So think like, how can I work on, my communication skills, whether you're in the relationship or whether you're, potentially thinking about one, because it's something you can always work on. Whether you've been with a person for 2 days, or 20 years, you can always work on your communication skills. And I mean, that's just the thing, isn't it? The longer you're in a relationship, you're going to change as a person. You're going to grow as a person. They're going to change. They're going to grow. And so along the way, it there's going to be new boundaries that need to pop up. Maybe it's something that you had just never thought about before, or maybe it's something that, you gave it a try but you just don't like it, or you've just completely changed how you feel. Maybe it wasn't a boundary before, maybe it was something you liked before and you don't like it anymore, and that's okay. But you have to present it to your partner in a healthy way. If they're doing the right thing and they're secure, they're going to respect that. And so that's just going to bring us to our last tip, which is mindfulness. Being aware of your emotions and aware of how you typically or normally would react to things, because nobody is perfect. There's no person that just sits there and is completely okay with everything. I mean, eventually in the relationship, you're going to hear stuff you don't like. And so you have to think, how am I going to kindly communicate to them like this, that, or the other? Anything you want to add to that?
I fully agree. I mean, there are definitely healthy boundaries that can be consistent in both directions, where everybody is completely respectful. And that introspection, the self-reflection, figuring out, what category you're in, how you can make your way from, the first three to the fourth secure one. What needs to change, not just for yourself, but for your partner. Is it something that you can, communicate to your partner to say, well, I really think that this would be the better way, and both of you can then have that sort of mindfulness, analyze how you're feeling about stuff. And sometimes you can even stem things before they happen. Like, you can feel yourself getting annoyed at a certain thing that your partner does or says, and you think, well, hang on, that's not realistic. That's not a reasonable reaction to this. Calm down, process it. Let's have a think. Okay, here's what we should be doing. And then you can, especially when those needs are expressed kindly, it's much easier to do that for both sides. So yeah, I think there is a lot that can be done, and ultimately, it's about mindfulness and good communication, introspection, respect, and kindness.
Exactly. And I think we're going to end it there. If you've made it this far, go ahead and drop a butterfly emoji in the comments below so we can see who the VPP are. That is our very pretty people, listeners of this podcast. Please drop a butterfly below and get a shout out in the next podcast. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Go ahead and please subscribe so you'll get notified when we drop our next episode.
Thank you very much.